Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Simmons. I'm a Senior Account Director here at H1, and today I am joined by our very good friend, Earl Seltzer, who leads strategy and innovation across CTI. Earl, you want to give us some more information about what that means?
Sure. So at CTI, we're a global CRO, and my role in leading therapeutic strategy and innovation is to work with our internal stakeholders and our potential customers to develop data-driven solutions for delivering their clinical trials and responding to their request for a proposal. I also work quite closely with our delivery teams to make sure that we're achieving our delivery expectations and also finding ways to innovate on the way that we go about clinical trial execution and management.
How about you start from the beginning, right? What brought you to H1? How did you hear about H1 initially? What types of challenges were you facing at CTI? Anything you want to kind of expand upon around that?
So one of the main reason that we were that drew us to H1 was we were conducting an assessment of the ecosystem of data providers, specifically those who could offer a self-service solution to accessing real-world data. And so as part of this process, which we initiated, I'd probably say in 2023 at this point, we were looking at all kinds of different solutions, and we came across H1 as a company that I initially didn't know much about. There's a list of companies that have a long-standing history in real-world data access and interrogation, and then we were intrigued to learn more about H1 once we saw a couple demonstrations of their platform and understood better the not only the types of data that they access, but their trajectory in increasing the types of data that are accessible to them, as well as the way they fit together within their system.
I know you mentioned real-world data as kind of a big overarching use case that you were looking to solve for. Fast forward to today, it's been a year or so. How have you found yourself using H1 most now?
So I think one of the things that I've been pleasantly surprised with is the ability for H1 to help us with integrating real-world data and clinical trial information that's available through different places on the internet. Unfortunately, the information about clinical trials, about investigator sites, does not sit in one place. Yeah, and the ability to have more of these different sorts of assets integrated into a single location is very beneficial for us, especially being a smaller organization that doesn't have large numbers of resources to support the thorough data analytics. So I think for us, we're really using H1 in a couple different avenues. One, of course, is probably what I would call the basic use cases for real-world data used in trial planning. This can be building queries based on ICD-10 codes, procedure codes, other types of diagnostic and prescription data, and using that to identify where potential trial participants exist, predominantly in the U.S., but also in other countries, which we know is an emerging space. Another use case that we see is helping this to support advanced site identification. So occasionally we find ourselves in situations where we need to expand the site pool or go into geographies where we're looking for a very specific combination of patient attributes in order to make sure that we're finding the best investigators and those who are more likely to see the patient of interest. The last use case is involving real-world data is really more around profiling the patients and the investigators themselves. So part of trial planning is really understanding the patient journey and understanding what the site care and treatment pathway is for these patients. So using H1, we're able to better understand what kinds of prescriptions are these patients taking, who's seeing them, who's involved in the management of these patients, and in some cases, what kinds of more complicated referral pathways can we uncover that might be useful for coming up with creative ways to to select sites and then manage a clinical trial.
And so on that last one about understanding patient profiles, patient journeys, treatment pathways, all of those kind of use cases, how were you doing that at CTI prior?
We relied a lot upon our medical expertise and really just a lot of looking into a number of disparate data sources And so I think the real benefit of H1 is that the ability to bring a lot of these assets together into one place. And while we recognize that there are ways to acquire real-world data that are not through public listings and things like that, we really felt it was necessary to invest in a subscription that would give us access to a wider swath of the claims data landscape, including pulling together some information outside the U.S. The ex-U.S. Challenges with real-world data access are different than the U.S., as many of us know, but it's still nice to see that there are efforts being made to try and use these information in ways that are similar to the U.S. to support some of the things I just mentioned.
And so also in thinking about, U.S. versus ex-U.S., figuring out where patients exist, something I remember came up kind of early on in our conversations was around feasibility for studies. Mm-hmm. So understanding even before you bid on a study, is this a study we think we can reasonably take on based on what we know about the patients, about the sites that are stood up for those types of studies? How has H1 been helpful in kind of the feasibility part of the process?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a big component of this is that we want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what the exact population we're looking for is going to be, and probably more importantly, does it exist and where does it exist? Using an asset like H1, we're better able to take the characteristics of the protocol as we understand it, and then replicate those patient characteristics into the platform, which gives us a sense of how large is this patient population, where are these individuals likely to see and at what sorts of specialties, and how, in which geographies more specifically. I think a great example of this was a study we were working on in a complex, inpatient disease. And the challenge that we found was that we know that these patients exist, just because it's there's an unmet need to treat these patients. It's a severe condition that has, really urgent needs for patient management. The hard part is that there haven't been a lot of studies done exactly like this, and the care journey at each site is really different. So you could have 10 different sites, and there would be 3 or 4 different ways that the patients are managed, which is further complicated by the fact that not all of the clinicians who see these patients are actually clinical trial investigators. H1 is really very helpful for us in solving this problem, because we're able to see not only where these patients existed, through and we tried out different sorts of ways of building this query according to the diagnostic and the treatment data, but we're able to not only see what kinds of clinicians were treating these patients at different sites, how many of them there were, and also what the clinical trial experience history was for those investigators. And with that particular exercise, we were able to identify a number of new clinicians to approach. Several of them made their way onto the study, which is a very positive development. And I don't know that we would have been able to achieve what we did without having an asset like H1 available to support this.
That's great. That's what we like to hear. When we first started kind of talking about CTI bringing on H1, it was very clear from the beginning that this is something that you were advocating from the beginning, to bring in a tool like this to get more data enabled across CTI. So fast forward to now, it seems like that's still kind of your role, being the conduit between H1 and CTI. What has that experience been like, being the person that kind of spreads the good news about H1 throughout the organization?
I think it's been, with any time you're bringing a new solution into an organization, doesn't matter the size or the position, there's always an onboarding period where we have to help the company understand the capabilities, what the value proposition is, and then we want to build out an internal network of super users. And so I think we've been successful in that regard, onboarding individuals and helping them become more comfortable with not only how to use the tool, but what to look for. I think for us, we still appreciate the support that H1 offers, particularly from the perspective of keeping us informed of new project updates, as well as offering technical expertise. I'll be the first to tell you that I oftentimes have what I think are great ideas for how to build study queries, but I may not know exactly the best way to put it together. And I found that working with our account team, it's been an efficient process to take a concept and then iterate on that with H1 to end up with something that we think is, directionally represents what we're trying to accomplish. So again, another feature of working with real world data is it's you don't always get things right on the first try, because a lot of the information you're trying to analyze is not put in place for research purposes. It's put in place for coding purposes or billing purposes, things like that. And so it's a bit of a puzzle. And I think having a team available to help put together this puzzle has been a pleasant experience for us to help ensure that we're making the most out of the use of the tool.
Right. And you're so right. It's never as simple as, show me patients that have X disease. It's show me patients that have X disease. These different, variants of it have had these prescriptions. It's always something a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think, we do find that I think H1 does a good job as well of giving us access to the sorts of things that are more likely to be useful to us, but also having a deeper set of information on the back end that can be interrogated if needed. So sometimes you need to go several layers down in your analysis, and the end user like ourselves may not be the best person to go several layers down. We may be able to scratch the surface, and that gets what we need, but there's also going to be instances where we have next level sorts of analyses that are really sort of getting at different angles on the problems that we're trying to answer.
And so looking back then about maybe year and a half into now working with H1, using our data for different types of projects, where would you say the biggest impact has been? Has it been, executing on studies that have already been won? Is it in RFP bid defense strategy? Where would you say the biggest impact has been?
I think it's been both. Yeah. I think the situation I described with identifying additional sites, that was very high impact for us as a company. I think, naturally, having these kinds of assets is important for helping us, win new business, not only because we want to be informed of the landscape, but because we are expected to have delivery solutions proposed that have a foundation in some sort of objective data, and so H1 gives us that. And so when it comes to simple things like visualizing where patients are versus where sites are located, that's something that's very useful for us. Sometimes we need to look at what the diagnostic journey is for patients. We had a situation like this in a cardiomyopathy study not long ago, where we were able to take two subsets of the population and look at their prescription tendencies, and able to just sort of have an initial conversation with the sponsor about what this means in terms of where their study fits at this point in time. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and it's one of these things that we may not use it on every opportunity, but when we do use it, it helps it helps us in various degrees with having the client comfortable with the fact that CTI really understands this space and can deliver accordingly.
That's great. So then, kind of just wrapping up, and I want to kind of circle back to something you brought up in the beginning. There's a lot of data providers out there, right? There's certainly companies that are more well-known than H1, that have been around longer than H1. So what about looking forward to our continuing relationship keeps you motivated that H1 was the right decision, right? What are the things that you look for when choosing a vendor for the long term?
I think the customer service is one. As I said, we're not the largest CRO in the world, but we still have rely upon partners to help us with these sorts of intensive data analysis. So I think having customer service that really understands, or client reps that really understand the database, helps us accomplish our goals a lot more efficiently. I think another piece is just the way the end user interface is designed. It is easy to use. It's not clunky. I think it is. I would probably say it is intuitive for what it can do, and the integration of not only the real world data with the other clinical trial information at either the trial level or the site level is really powerful. That's something that you can do manually. It takes forever, but having it built into the tool gives us the ability to more quickly make decisions and take away insights. I think the ability to quickly transform what's on the front end and the end user interface into an Excel download is quite useful. Sometimes we want to download the information and do and mark it up, maybe visualize it a different way. So I think not being put into a single box with how you actually have to interact with the data is another powerful component. The last thing I'd probably say is just recognizing the pace of innovation. So whatever, that's one of the things I think that's attractive to me about H1 is I know there's always going to be iterations and updates to what's either included or the way the interface functions. And for us, we want to stay on the leading edge of these things. And so we want to be able to work with partners who have an update cycle or looking at ways to refresh the insights, add new functionality to it. And I feel pretty confident that's going to continue with working with H1.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the time today, Earl. This has been great to learn more about how you've been using the tool, and hopefully we'll keep on working together as the year go on.
I'm looking forward to more success stories.
Absolutely.